do a quick. Robert?
Hi.
Hi. Merle.
Present? Oh, present.
Kelsey here. Glenn. Crystal. And Jenny's here.
Heidi.
Heidi. Is Heidi coming? Anybody heard from Heidi? Oh, we do have a forum, so let's go into the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great ball.
Okay, so this is a work session where we're gonna be going over the OSBA rewrite policy review, and I'll turn it over to Dan.
Yeah, well, thank you, board members, for your feedback. And so what I think, and Jenny had sent you an email over the weekend. And so I'd like to follow that lead in terms of if there are questions that did not get answered, we can have a discussion. So hopefully we're not going through 50+ policies that are where there might be questions. So and I guess just to give some also, where do I see this going is of the A through F policies that there were questions. My goal is that we would have those up for adoption at the September 16th board meeting. So unless we're tabling some or having discussion. So hopefully you have your questions answered. If we do need to do a rewrite, we could table some aside, but that we would have those A through Fs up for adoption on September 16th, because we'll be doing this same process on starting at G through, I'm not sure the last letter, but
Okay.
G through K. So we would do this exact same process, G through K, sometime between now and the September 16th board meeting. And of course, I would take your feedback if this process was easy for you, difficult for you. I think for Diane and I, it worked okay. Appreciate Rick Stuckey from OSBA putting his adding his comments to that column. So Jenny, did you have any other thoughts about how to go through
I
these?
say we just go top to bottom unless anybody else has a different idea. I went ahead and went through the ones that had my name on it, and I was able to actually remove quite a bit, but we'll just go
Yeah,
at the top. So Crystal and I had the same kind of like, what's this policy about? I think Rick did a good job of answering it. I just still had a question on if we've ever had a bias incident at North Marion, if anybody knows. I don't know if you know that.
I would not know that, or I don't know
We
that.
haven't, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, it was adopted in 2020. And we haven't had one in 4 years. I just kind of struggled with, like, this is a bias incident which criminal investigation or prosecution is impossible or inappropriate. I was like, in what case, like, if there was any use case scenarios that we would apply this in, that's all. But it is required. It's a required policy in ARs.
Yeah.
So I'm fine to move on.
So you just wanna, so I think maybe just to, if you wanna go down and list every policy, you know, and so for instance, when we get to, you know, I guess maybe whether we just pause quickly, no further questions, next one.
Sure.
Is that how you want to do it?
Yeah, did
Okay.
anybody else have questions about that one?
So then BBAA,
The next three, I'm fine removing,
okay,
because we're with my name on
okay,
them. Crystal had a question if West was required by law. And the reference is if there are 4 or more vacant seats.
Yeah, so in the instance that you'd have 4 or more vacant seats, so in other words, you don't really have a quorum, then the WSD would step in until you had a quorum.
Until the board
Yeah.
filled those seats,
Yes.
or that's like if nobody was like, hey, I'm volunteering, I'll be
Yes.
on, okay.
Yeah,
I don't,
We would go through our entire process of
yeah,
posting and announcements and then if there is no,
if there's still nobody, okay. I'm okay with that, is anybody else? Kelsey, Robert, no?
That was, it's in the statute, so
Mhm.
I don't see a way around it. I can see her point, but I think we just have to
Okay,
let that stand.
yeah, okay, any other comments before we move on to the next one?
Let's see.
go ahead and call out the policy so I can.
Okay, BBD and BBE are okay. Hi Heidi.
Thank you.
We're already moving through our list. We'll just pause a second and let Heidi.
No, go ahead, keep going.
Oh, okay. Moving on to BBF. I called this one out because it was adding child abuse reporting language, but it already exists in the proposed policy. I like it. I like consistency and, you know, we don't need a lot of redundancy, less words, easy. That was kind of my approach in going through this and calling this one out, so. It's the last one on the first page, So Rick said if we're not wanting the redundancy, he recommends keeping it BBF. Since it is a highly recommended policy and not adopting the optional BBFC. And I don't know if you guys are okay with that, or
No,
do we want
I
to take a minute? and read?
made that note also that if we were to take the VBF was the new policy,
Mhm.
the first paragraph there is exactly the same as number 22 on board standards and conduct. If we added the next 2 paragraphs to board standards and conduct, we would have exactly everything there. And we would just need to add one ORS reference 332107 to the legal references at the bottom, and we would cover it. No need to have a second one.
I like that, I like that approach.
So that's what I would recommend.
So in a
you-
nutshell,
Yeah, can you tell us what we're talking about here?
Looking at, on this list. I called out BBF because there was some redundant language. In the 2 policies.
This is the board standards of conduct.
I guess you probably have it here. Yeah.
Board member standards if you
Yeah.
want that, yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I know I'm late, what does board standards of conduct, where we talk about child abuse on here?
I guess we don't have
On
the F.
On the
in-
back, number 22. Board standards. BBF. Right? Yeah, but I don't have it on my.
We don't have a BBF in here, do we?
Mm-mm.
I have one
I have
Yeah.
one.
We have a B.
right here,
let's see. B,
Right here.
BF
that's it right here,
is what we're looking
It says-
for though.
BBF, we're talking about this paragraph right here.
Well, there's a new
Right here.
policy that includes this and then 2 more. What
But
is
is
the
it-
number on it?
Does it have to do with board member of conduct? Because this is saying that this requires a board member to report child abuse if we come across it.
What is it?
And
B,
is it referring to that same thing in other?
BBF, something else? BBF.
I guess my question is if it's in another policy, but if somebody's looking up something, it's usually they're just gonna look at one policy. So does it hurt to have it you know, also in this one.
That's a good call out, yeah.
And the new one is BBFC, that's what. it should be.
I would recommend keeping BBF.
Mhm.
Because that it goes under other board member standards of conduct. As far as BBFC, you're not gonna see this in this review because nobody, I made a comment on it.
Okay.
But
I-
this is the.
I could pull it up. I don't know what's being done.
See, we're saying if we would just take,
Oh, I
this
see.
is exactly the same as this,
Yeah,
if we add these two paragraphs. To this. We've done the same thing.
oh, I see.
No, because then if you go to another district and you look up that same policy. Then it's gonna be different. They need to be consistent across the state of Oregon.
Yeah,
There's lots of policies that other school districts don't have. So you're saying that because this is not a required policy, it's a highly recommended to add this language. I guess it doesn't matter. I just like simple and not being redundant. That's my preference. I don't really care. Not the hill I'm gonna die on, I guess.
Maybe for the September meeting. We could add BBFC to the list. We can take a look at it.
And see what we like better. That's a good idea.
As of right now, I think BBFC is in that group of adopted. Because again,
Yeah.
it wasn't called out.
We've already adopted it.
And no, it's going to be adopted as part of that action item we
Okay.
have here.
Well, yeah, as a.
Yeah, I don't care.
Oh, here it is. Right, yes. So it's a proposed policy that is reporting of suspected abuse of a child, which it talks about a board member, like basically
Right.
board
Sure.
code of conduct or like.
Mhm.
Mandatory reporter, we're mandatory
Yeah.
reporters. You know all about that.
So Merle's saying we could essentially just add these and a reference to. BBF
Mhm.
and. The information is still there. It's not. Another new reporting of suspected of child abuse.
Yeah, and then Rick's recommendation was to adopt BBF, but not adopting BBFC because it was the more
I make
optional.
those changes, add those two paragraphs and add the legal reference ORS. 332-107, it's the only one that's not included.
Which is a really generic ORS. If you've read it, it just says that a board has to have
Policy.
policies.
I know 107 and 105 are both like that, they
Yeah.
really don't say much as far as being definitive.
Right.
So I think, so for a couple options when we get to adopting policies, so we could either, adopt all the policies as presented on the agenda, which would include BBFC. And then when we come back at September, we could possibly bring that one up for deletion and get more language in, because we're not gonna adopt BBF tonight.
Correct.
So we'll get some additional language and reference on the BBF and possibly then vote to delete BBFC.
That'd be,
I
yeah,
think that'd be easier when we get to the action item that we're not making a motion. You know what I'm saying?
everything except, yeah.
Yes.
No, I agree.
Okay,
I like that approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sorry I'm late, you probably already talked about this, I am driving a Norwegian, electric car here that's about the size of this table, because it was the car I was left with that my son left at our house, and anyway, I didn't know how to drive it, um. What is the,
pink way out there?
yeah. It was red, but it's kind of faded. What is the different colors in this? Like, there's like an orange and then
that's
red.
the who is by the person, so,
No, on the actual like policy.
oh, okay,
On
sorry,
this.
Diane, you can,
I had not figured out why sometimes it would come up in purple and why sometimes it would come out. But essentially, that is what the change is. So the colors have no,
And the changes from whom?
Red is,
OSBA.
OSBA. Okay,
Yeah.
these are the ones that,
These
so
are,
there's no board member that went in and
No.
did this.
No,
that's correct.
Okay, this is OSBA's
Right.
recommendations. Okay, that's all I
Correct.
wanted to know.
or reviewed by Bill and the team beforehand,
Okay,
so,
All
yeah.
right.
okay, any other discussion on BBF? Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm fine removing this from review, my questions were answered on that one.
And we're on what?
That is BDA. I'm fine removing the next one from review, BDDC.
The election one,
No, that was the ADA agenda. Making sure that the agenda is available,
okay.
accessible. Next one is also me. BDDG, BDDK, I'm fine with the answer provided. The next one, BDDH. I'm again fine with the answer provided. Next one, Heidi, you're up on BFD.
Okay, well, this talks about where policies are stored, if I remember right? No. Is that
Yes.
one? Okay. Yeah, and I think it would be a good idea to require that they also be online, since that is where everybody's gonna look for them. Nobody's gonna come and look at a manual. So, I
Did
mean,
you
we
see
do
the
that.
answer in the box?
Yes, but I know that they are there and we do that. I'm just saying if it should be in our policy.
Like stating it, if it
It should be,
stating in the policy, it
Yeah.
would be available online.
yeah, I don't know, then it just means,
I know they're available to us, are they available to
Yeah,
anyone online?
I think that's fine to say that they'll be available online.
I think it says that somewhere in another policy, but.
I think whether we wanted to, where it says policy dissemination, whether we wanted to say in a policy manual, comma, online or on paper. I think that we do meet the policy, though, in the very last sentence where the district shall make a copy of the board's policy manual available to the public. It's available to the public electronically. So I think we could go either way on that, whether we wanted to add.
okay, I'm fine with it. I mean, I think the intent is there and,
Mhm.
yeah, I just. Kind of had thought, well, it'd always be nice to ensure that they'll always be available. Electronically. But I think that, I can't see us going back.
No.
So, it's fine.
Okay, we're good on that one. Crystal's not on with us, so I say we skip that. I'm not sure what she was thinking about that one.
I didn't understand that one either.
Are you on
CBA?
CBA?
CBA.
Yeah.
Calls out for a discussion point.
Yeah,
The BBBA, the BBBA,
CBA,
BBA.
CBA.
cat, basket, apple, what is that? What's the C? Charlie,
yes.
Charlie Bravo Alpha.
alpha?
I need to keep us on track on that one.
I guess so skipping crystals? I think so, yeah. Next one is CBC. They said that we could with removing the charter school, there's a reference to a charter school, we don't have one in our districts, we're not planning on getting one.
Yeah, that was my comment, typically, language is best to be broad, but in this context, I just can't see there being a charter school, so we want that struck out, we can get that struck out for adoption next month.
All the other
Or-
policies.
Isn't there,
removed it.
Heidi, I thought a charter school is not. Like, if somebody wants to organize
Yeah,
and we don't have policy language, they get to organize.
yeah.
If we don't have policy language, they can organize how they want to.
Wouldn't that just mean that we're not sponsoring the charter?
I don't know why it hurts to keep the language in there
Yeah,
in
I
case
don't
we have it,
either.
in case somebody wants to start a charter school down the line. Then they don't have to go reinvent the wheel.
Well,
I
not
don't know
just
why it hurts to
that,
keep the language.
I remember having this conversation. I think
There
it
are
was
people
with-
that have, since I've been on the board, there's been discussion of charter schools.
Yeah,
We've had, 2 times being approached, and I think, it's kind of gaining speed, if you will, these online virtual charter
am I
schools.
remembering that right?
Mhm.
That conversation? Okay,
Yeah, actually, that was just within the past year or two that came up, an online, about
Yeah.
us hosting an online one.
Yeah,
I mean, it was I heard the rumor out there at
About North
least,
Marion, you said?
yeah.
yeah.
Maybe Greg's gonna correct me, I don't know if he knows anything about this. No, there was a school who has a charter school and they kind of approached, I think it might have been Ginger about maybe us taking it on. There wasn't some talk about that kind of?
yeah, but I don't remember the name.
I
of
don't
it.
remember who it was either.
And it was kind of vague.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
it
there
was
wasn't a lot of,
kind of a way for us to make money.
Yeah, I'm fine leaving it in there. I don't think it changes the,
Is this?
I looked at this as more of a property issue and not seeing us doing anything with
Which
you know,
one? I don't even know which one we're talking about.
CBC.
superintendent's
Oh,
contract.
the superintendent's contract.
So I didn't see this being relevant to the conversation of. If there's policy that's talk about the potential of a charter school, absolutely, we need to have that language, because. Like was said, anybody could start looking to launch a charter school. I looked at this more as a property issue. And not seeing the relevance of,
Within a superintendent's contract.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. But if we want to just keep it broader, that's like my comment is that's always better,
Yeah,
so,
cover your ass.
Doesn't hurt it.
no,
Okay,
all right, we'll leave it.
let's move forward with leaving it. Heidi, you're up on CCA.
So is the one the one that says delete here, but then we saw a proposed one, didn't you give us one at our last board meeting? The organizational chart, we're talking about
I
organizational.
emailed you one last week,
That was where I saw it, okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
I was really responding to your question, do we have a district org chart up to date? And yes, we do, and you've received that, and you're actually gonna get a new and improved one very soon. So,
Newer than this?
yeah, more detail.
would it, so would we could include that, would we have one that was maybe without the names of people, but just with positions? Would we have one we could keep as part of CCA?
Well, I think the recommended delete here was just the recommended, and Rick's comments there is just becoming out of date, so handbooks would be a better location for a org chart, so.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
agree with that, yeah.
so
and
just
I
not
would-
having one in our policy.
Yeah, so the recommendation is to delete the policy. So that you don't have a static org chart in a policy, which I would agree with because I did make changes to the
Yeah.
org chart.
Yeah,
So,
So let's go on to the next one then,
Okay.
CCB. Lines of direct authority will be those approved by the board shown on the district organization chart. If we reference it, do we have to have it in policy or can it be in the handbook then? The organizational chart.
let's see here.
And there's a reason why I'm talking about this. Because that was one of my issues a few years ago.
where are you
God
at?
knows what I'm talking
In the
about. I
paragraph?
think you do.
I,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
In
I
terms
think
of-
it's the second line. on
Yeah.
CCB, lines of direct authority will be those approved by the board and shown on the district
Yeah.
organization
I
chart.
see.
I think if we put a reference in there. That the org chart is available
Parentheses, it says it's included in the
in
handbook.
a handbook,
Distributed to staff and board members.
yeah.
Or even broader, you could say as as designed or as determined by the superintendent.
Mhm.
So-
I understand your quandary because you've given weight to,
And then the board.
to one thing, but
would
not
each
to the
receive that
reference
copy.
of
Let's like.
that actually being policy, and so it
Yeah, it
it
is,
creates a gray area, which I'm not sure that there's ever anything that would, you know, be consequential because of it, but it does create a gray area.
So what can happen is that. If the board is not informed about changes in the district's organization. And a superintendent just acts on their own. Then it's really going against policy, against this policy, correct?
okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And, so, that's why I'm saying is if a change is made, it's slipped into a handbook. And then the board doesn't really know about it until it's too late.
This isn't talking about where the org chart is located. This is giving the board authority, is talking
Yeah.
about authority, not where
Yeah,
in the staff handbook. So,
okay. So if we do away with the policy that says that we have to have an org chart, or what was it say? What was the other policy saying? We're just saying the policy was the org chart, I guess. Okay.
I see what you're saying though,
mhm.
because if we take out the org chart, then that kind of freaks out. Any kind of teeth that the board.
Yeah,
could
I always like charts. Cause they tell you, they give you a lot of information at one glance. You can see, it's just, I like those lines of authority and communication being clearly delineated. That anybody can refer to and see who works for who and who's responsible for who and. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know this one. I would leave it up to what.
Would it be,
I feel most comfortable with.
would it be better to say lines of direct authority will be provided to the board? And shown on the district? No.
They have to be approved by the
Okay.
board. And shown on the district organization chart. That's okay. It, by what you said, Jane, is probably correct. By stating that they're shown on the district organization chart, it's kind of implying that there is a district or that we're required to have a district organization chart. Okay, well, I'm okay with that. Just had a talk.
Do you want to put the reference in there, like Merle was suggesting about saying that it would be provided in a handbook? Or on the district website?
Well, I mean, whenever we say a handbook, I'm not sure which handbook they're talking about, like where
We
would I
have
go?
4
for that?
handbooks,
Okay, okay.
and they're more of a student parent handbook.
Yeah,
I don't think we have an overarching staff handbook,
I don't think, yeah,
and we should, but we don't.
yeah, but I'm okay with the language, I
Okay.
just,
We could just say the organization policy. It would just need to be updated every year. So.
Or anytime there's a
Or any
change.
kind of.
Yeah.
And I think if we did it that way, then I mean, if one change is made, then somebody's gonna have to remember, oh, we gotta go back into the policy, and then if it's not, then we're out of compliance. I think this covers us saying that the lines of authority will be approved by the board.
okay.
Glenn, what do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
This gets down to you either trust your superintendent or you don't. And I mean, it just does for me.
Mhm.
You're either gonna trust the job that they're gonna do or you're not, and if you're not, then you call them out on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
If you are, and I know that's tough, but it's, I would rather not get too far into operations. That's just not our purview. I do understand your point though, because we had hires that we didn't even know about.
yeah.
And so that was problematic to learn after the fact that things had happened, and so, that's. All right, we're being recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and I'm just, I think that you're right, there's a gray area between, operational control, but I have always felt that the board, when it comes to your broad organization, especially when you're talking about administrative configuration,
Mhm.
should be approved by the board. And then the more, the operations below that, that's the superintendent's purview, do you know what I'm saying? You know? So the superintendent decides he needs to go out and hire an assistant superintendent.
Mhm.
I think that that's something that should come before the board.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, see, in that scenario, I think you're absolutely right, and we've been down that road before, and so, I.
Bring up a good point about, do we trust our super and does our super trust us?
Well,
Yeah,
part
this
of
is checks and balances, that's all it is, it's not a distrust thing, it's
Yeah.
just a understanding, yeah.
So you've been.
Yeah, and I'm having this internal dialogue of, do I make suggestions to this that, get us deeper into,
Into the weeds.
yeah, I mean, cause the other thought I had is lines of direct authority will be approved by the board and shown on the district organizational chart by the superintendent annually. Something like that. You're trying to kind of create a check that there's gonna be a process to say, this is the org chart, either same as last year, or here's the org chart, here's some changes that I've made.
As a board member, I would like to see that every year, but I know that because we've been in bargaining, so I'm understanding this, but. Every little thing that we put into Langbridge is one more thing
For
you
somebody
have to do.
remember.
Or actually Diane probably, or whoever sits there
Right.
has to remember to do every year, they have to do this and that, and. I don't know,
I mean,
I see both sides.
yeah.
You have to remember that all new hires come before the board also, anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say our consent agenda, every
Yeah.
new hire.
Do you have any thoughts, Kelsey? Okay. So I'll take it back to you, Heidi, are you okay with the way that the proposal is written?
I'm okay with this language as it stands, and I'm also okay if Dan wants to add that, but I can understand that that's putting yet another requirement on somebody, and I don't know that we need that. So I could go either way, I'd like to know if anybody else feels strongly about anything here.
I like the proposed language, I think it's broad enough, not so far into the weeds that we're putting more work on to Diane and Dan. We can always bring it back up, though. if
Yeah.
we-
No, I'm okay with it, it was just probably PTSD there, sorry.
Okay, that is CCP.
As it is, it certainly implies that there is one somewhere.
Yes.
Yes,
Whether or not
I remember, so was I.
we're given access to it
Yeah,
each time it changes, I guess it's a question that at least says there is one.
okay, and so going back to CCA, Heidi, are you okay with those comments that were provided?
Aren't we deleting that?
we are.
We are, but you had just made a call out, so I just wanted. to
Oh, I'm
close
okay,
the loop on
yeah,
that
I'm
one.
okay with it. Thank you.
Alright. So the next one, Crystal brought up CCG, evaluation of administrators. Section, page 2, 3, culturally responsive practice. Not
So the very last, on number, at the very end of the policy, I think her question was, did it need to say address ways to help educators strengthen their culturally responsive practices? Yeah, I think that's what she was asking, whether that needed to be in there, and Rick had said that that's aligned to the state board's evaluation in an OAR, and I scanned for local districts that all have the exact same language, so I think it's a common to be in administrator evaluation policies.
Can you give me an example of how you would address ways to help educators strengthen their culturally responsive practices?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's a really broad term with a lot of different people's
Right.
definitions.
Yeah.
So I think you've got examples of making sure your curriculum that students see themselves in the books that you choose and things of that nature. But I think you could also be very specific and practical about the importance of, I always kind of point to vocabulary development and making sure you have really strong vocabulary instructional strategies, especially a more of a secondary person, to make sure that you're having strategies that language learners can learn. So I think you've got a really broad term there, culturally responsive practices. Around, you could go from a more academic one, like the second example, or you could be going a more generalized of saying, hey, we're gonna have literature books where kids see themselves and their cultures in them. So those would be two ways to making sure that our teachers and administrators are aware or strengthening their culturally responsive practices. I think this district has done that with, they've read the book Culturally Responsive, or the Hammond book on that. So I think it's definitely been a part of this district for a few years. So my recommendation is we leave it. It's referenced in the state board's evaluation standards and it's commonplace everywhere.
I support leaving it, it's kind of new buzzwords, honestly, since I've been on board, new buzzwords come through, and this is the one right now, and it is ubiquitous, is that the word?
Yeah.
And I think that like it's just reiterating what's in other policies or practices.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Does anybody else have any other thoughts on CCG? Okay, so we're okay moving forward with that. Next one, let's brought up CI.
There wasn't identified, there's brackets there, and that hadn't been identified, which was being chosen. And so I recommend striking out the assistant superintendent and choosing an administrator. So the sentence would read, when the superintendent is to be absent from the district, an administrator will be designated to serve in the superintendent's absence. That's what it should read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Would we ever put a timeline on that? Like, oh, it's, if you're gone for less than a week?
No.
No, I'm just asking a question just so I understand.
Policy.
So what was the question?
Like, would you ever put a time on that? Like,
No,
like if you're out of the office for a day or a week or whatever, you're like, you guys got it. You're in charge of this, you're in charge of this, that kind of thing.
yes, I would do that for even one day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and this is just saying if you are out for
oh,
any kind of absence.
I mean, I agree to, because all that strikeout language, so it's basically saying whenever I am absent, there's someone designated to be responsible.
And does this designate, specify who
No,
appoints, or who designates?
I think it would be the superintendent designating that.
It's implied perhaps, but doesn't say so. That would seem appropriate.
Yeah.
I just.
I mean, there's so much language in various places where the superintendent or designee, and that designee is designated by the superintendent, so I think that's kind of implied that the superintendent would assign.
Would be the one.
Yeah.
And I don't see where the language is, when earlier on, I had noted the word temporary would be stricken, be restored.
Do you think that that's implied in the title of the policy under temporary administrative arrangements?
During his or her temporary absence from duty. The temporary absence is defined. And so there's no, in what's left, there's no mention of temporary.
Yeah, I think this is just, this legal reference is referencing another kind of generic ORS. So I think we could restore whatever you felt comfortable with. It's just, I think the gist of it is the superintendent is gonna be designating
Yeah,
someone to serve.
and sentence one of the old policy says that superintendent is authorized and so on.
I kind of like this really, just brief 2-paragraph language because it actually is better, I think works better because it says when the superintendent is to be absent, period. It can be for half a day or
Yeah.
one day or whatever. It
Mhm.
just puts the onus on the superintendent to, he has to make sure that there's somebody in charge when he's gone.
Yeah,
I agree. That less is definitely more on this one, in my opinion.
I like the new language as well. But I wanna make sure that everybody's,
I think it covers it all. When very last sentence, the board will assign superintendent's duties as appropriate. I mean, it covers everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Merle, do you have final thoughts on that?
I think it's implied, I'm okay with it. If
Okay.
the rest of you are okay with it. I like being specific and saying so.
Yeah.
If the superintendent's the one, because the next paragraph says that he's disabled, the board does it, but so the implication is that sentence one, he's not disabled, so he does it.
Mhm.
Okay,
So
moving on
Um,
to CPA.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
So we were given 2 CIs, is it just, oh, I see, that's the old policy. Okay, never
Yes.
mind, thank you. Oh, and this next one's me, huh?
Well, and you caught a mistake, I think, on this one.
This was weird.
Yeah, I looked at this, and I think it was a mistake, so that it should say. In the second to. Right towards the very end, prior to the initial development of a recall procedure for administrators, what's on here is the board will consult with employees or a designated representative of the employees covered by this policy. And that should say the superintendent, the
Okay,
superintendent will
makes more-
consult,
that makes more sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I checked other districts with this policy and they all said the superintendent, so,
Okay,
that was my question too, the board will consult, how will they do that?
right,
It should say
yeah.
the superintendent.
Okay. Next one, DBD, budget priorities and DBE, budget preparation. Both call out who owns the priorities. One says the board and one does not say the board.
Oh, really, so we at DVD. So I think on DVD, I think it should, the strike through should include staff, it should just say the district will use a prioritizing system consistent with program needs identified by staff and the board. So I think that, I'm not sure if that's what she was,
So the priorities are set by the staff and the board, and then the budget committee comes in along with the board to finish the rest of the process.
I think so,
But the budget cut committee by definition includes the budget committee and the board, correct?
yes.
So are you saying strike out staff?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on those two?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Glenn, Kelsey, no, Robin? All right,
The budget preparation is the one that doesn't say the board, and the budget priorities do. I guess that makes sense. My questions were just discuss it, sort of.
Mhm.
I'm short on understanding, so I think that makes sense to me.
So the superintendent will deliver the completed budget document and budget message to the budget committee, which by definition, just like Glenn said, includes the board when they're ready for presentation. I think I'm fine moving this forward. Mr. Stutzman, you're up on DBB and DBE.
Yeah.
Well, we just did
those
those.
same
Oh,
ones
sorry,
that I'm
I
saying
just
that
saw the
was,
Yeah.
folded
Yeah.
font.
questions for understanding on my part. Well, I did have a question about investments, who manages portfolio.
Would
I
you like
don't
to
know
ask
that we do much of that,
I don't know.
Linda's on.
Linda's on.
but really that should be under DFA, investment funds, I think. Rather than budget.
Is there a question I can answer?
Well, we are gonna be getting to yours in a second, Linda. I wanted to also say that, that Rick from OSBA had said that there was a recommendation to make DBE as an AR to DBD. But, I mean, I honestly like these two sort of separately as far as budget priorities and budget preparation.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
I agree.
You agree with me on that one? Yeah. I think they need to be two separate policies.
Merle, did you want to ask Linda about your questions about?
About
Investments.
who develops criteria for investments and manages the portfolio. But that's really, I'm on the wrong one.
Okay,
DFA. If I'm gonna ask that question.
oh, okay, all right, let's move to DBK. Crystal's looking for an example on why the board would not need to know about transfers.
And Linda, this is the one that I talked to you about and that we had a brief discussion around that proposed language. That you
Yes.
said really relevant, so I'll turn it over to you before I misspeak.
Okay, at North Marion and a lot of school districts, we appropriate at the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, so instructional support services and on down the line levels. We don't appropriate with our budget at the 100, 200, 300, 400 level. So for instance, I might have budgeted for salaries and benefits for employees that we can't now hire, but we're going through a service to hire. So that would be a 300 fund instead of a 100, or object instead of a 100 and 200. You don't want me coming to you every time we're moving that around. You've approved the appropriation for the expense of that employee, however it comes out of the pot. So there's no need to, you wouldn't, well, my auditors would hate us, but you would never want to be, because we're at a 1,000 level. So the 1,000 is instructional purposes, 2,000 is support services, like that. We have a debt service, those sorts of things, and that's how we appropriate.
And Linda, did you think that we should not adopt this proposed language that was on there?
If you could read it to me, I can tell you.
The superintendent has the authority to approve transfers between programs, elementary, middle and high school. And or object codes, and that's where it gives the 100, 200, 300, 400 within the same appropriation.
There's no need to do that. We're not required to do that because we appropriate at the higher level. So they're talking about, when they say within the same appropriation, they're talking about that higher. If you want to say in the instructional services, we thought we needed 5 teachers in one grade, but we really need them in the, say at the primary, but we really need 5 up at the intermediate, and you're just going to make that call. I don't think that needs to go before the board to have that changed. You have that authority.
Would you like? Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what this language is trying to get at, that the superintendent has the authority to approve transfers between programs and or object codes. So,
I say we table this one until we can get a little bit more feedback from Crystal.
okay. And I'll do a little bit more research on what other districts have there too.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Stutzman, moving on to DFA. That's where you had your questions.
So I have a question. Now, the investment of funds and who makes that decision? Or who develops the criteria for investments and who manages the investment portfolio? With excess funds.
I manage our investments. Mostly our investments go through a local government investment pool. So they manage the actual money. We just say how much is in there. So for instance, our state school fund payment for the month goes into to our regular investment pool. And then as we need the money to pay bills or whatever, we transfer it out into our checking account as it's needed. You can have up to 40-some million in the local government investment pool before being out of policy. That's never been an issue for North Marion. We don't carry that kind of money. So, and they do really well with their investments.
Hey, you do a good job.
Does that answer?
Yeah,
what you-
I
what you-
assume the board may authorize that we have done that.
Well, I would know, but I would just, the board may authorize the investment of, so I would obviously be dependent upon the business manager to
To
be,
do that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
Okay, next one, DFD, rental and service charges, and DFE, Merle, which one you?
Okay, and I think that was answered. I was just looking at that saying, well, these are both smaller amounts of money that come in and they could just be commingled and handled together and one policy cover them. Well, not necessarily commingled. I think they need to be accounted for. And I don't know how they are usually accounted for.
I think why you'd want to keep these separate though is, especially with the rental and service charges is, if somebody wants to question or challenge and we had discussed earlier about. We're gonna be able to point to the policy that says we do it this way versus the admission. So I would recommend these being kept separate. So that people can look up, how does the rental and service charges get decided?
I'm satisfied with that.
But I did like your question about the golden age card. No one had ever heard of that. And so I am recommending, so we did catch some good things by going through this, so I am recommending that we strike out that and just say senior citizens will be admitted free, period.
Really?
Yes, that's what we do.
About that.
Pays to be on the board.
Now, I don't know what defines senior
Dan?
citizen. Again, but-
Dan, Dan,
And
I don't know if you can do that across the board. OSAA and when you go to state champions and stuff have different criteria. So
That,
maybe North Marion events, I don't know, that we might dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
That's true.
okay, that's,
Thanks,
that,
Linda.
All spectators in the district, so I think this is specific to our district.
But if you have a state playoff game at our district, we collect the money and send that to OSAA. So they would be expecting whatever amount of tickets that were given out.
And what
So
about like legacy games? Like they always collect for
yeah.
those, or their legacy is not the right name for them, but they're.
Yeah, you're
No,
right.
you're right.
Baseball, there's something
Yeah,
they do
you-
with baseball. Okay.
Can
Yeah.
we just, does it have to be in the policy that will admit them?
Can we say 63 and above?
Senior citizens.
Dang it.
they bring up a good point for, there are, you know, there are exceptions where we can't allow for senior citizens to get in free.
So can we just empower if the event has
It's
the
allowed?
latitude? Yeah, if the event has the latitude, or if the school has the latitude to be able to offer free, whatever.
Mhm. So we could say senior citizens will be admitted free except when required.
Just
If the event allows.
in there,
Okay.
yeah,
Or aligned with OSAA.
I've been here too long, so I even remember when our conference we were in would not allow us to charge a different rate than the conference had set. So they set rates too, so it can get tricky.
I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, you probably should just strike line 1,
Or just say when allowed.
or I would just strike the whole, not even talk about senior citizens, just.
So does that mean that we charge or?
When we charge them now, I don't, I'm not aware of any senior
This is
citizen
never.
rate. I don't think we have a senior citizen rate,
Yeah,
do we?
No.
well, yeah,
Okay.
Grandparents get in free all the time.
Really? You have to be a
They don't
grandparent?
Charge me when
Well,
I go to-
Yeah,
No, I
Yeah,
mean,
I
actually, that's not
asked
bad.
Mark, cause I asked him, I said, why I called Mark, and I said, what's the golden age card? And he goes, I've never heard of it, and so then he goes, we just let him in, the same senior citizen, you know, so there's not.
Well, I didn't, see, now, I don't think that's fair, because that's just like something you have to know to get in. Okay, I'm
I think,
Leave the old people alone,
I
come
think
on.
an old person, I
I think there's signs when you walk in to like the admission prices.
Yeah, and it's like, whatever senior citizen it says. It's free, because
Maybe.
my parents have been getting it for a couple of,
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
the first time I
At
asked how
football
much
and
do I owe,
basketball.
they look at me and they go, and Silverton
Well, we
does
can be
that
thankful
too.
for that, we don't look at
Was
it.
this
I'm gonna
your
bring my
board
walker.
member?
You-
Alright, what's it saying?
All right, so how do we wanna land this plane on this one, so.
If the event allows,
I'll work with Mark and we'll get some,
I'm also fine. with
I think
like-
what Peggy just
So we
really
just
strike
say
it.
Right now.
admitted free, or just strike it
I
out
mean-
and let them operate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just strike while I'm
That
operating.
way Director decides to operate.
Yeah, I think that.
If you don't like the
the
old person, charge them.
Are they a heckler or are they not? a heckler?
Yeah.
Are they on our team?
Are they from
not
other
our
team? Yeah. Your old people are bad, ours are good.
Yeah, let's make it like a school policy, not a
Yeah.
district policy, yeah.
Glenn, do you have thoughts on this?
You don't wanna know them. I'm just thinking.
We spent a lot of time on it.
During COVID, when we were, had people who would and who wouldn't. I don't think we want any qualifications on them getting in free or not free. It was already a firefight.
I'm not dying on this one. I don't care.
Is this really board, like,
Yeah,
it's
I-
really
I-
board business? I mean,
so-
should we just leave it to the individual buildings?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, I do think when you have, if someone were to challenge, you know, and say, we point to policy, this is our board, you know, wants us allowing seniors in, this is, so when you have such broad language that spectators are going to be assessed these fees except for the following, then you're able to kind of point back to say, this, our board agrees with this. So that's where I always go to, if it's gonna get challenged and adjudicated before you, are you,
Do we have policy?
do we have policy that says that?
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of where I sort of lean towards leaving it in there and I wanted to say what we're gonna do. So if we're going to make exceptions for seniors, I'd rather just have it stay in there.
You wanna work on the language then, and then come
Yes.
back to us or something?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
good call out, Carl. 7 minutes ago.
And the same thing's true of children under 6.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And the good news is, I think we're just all on the honor system and you just, you know, make your way in, so.
I mean, you get there early enough, everything's free, right? Next one, DGA, DGB, authorized signatures. Merle, that was you.
Yeah. I think, that satisfies it and I understand it. Well, we have a meeting in between and we authorized. Signage, I think,
Yeah.
I didn't know if we authorized the HR payroll special as well. They also sign checks. We're free to with this new language.
HR and payroll and myself and Dan are our check signers. And
Okay,
you authorize us to be bonded every year.
okay, so we did that last meeting. July. Good, I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, I'm fine to remove the DGC. And then the next one is DH, loss coverage. Some language was removed about. Of any person who is not bondable will not be hired for the position in which that person handles district funds. I'm just thinking we wanted to maybe tweak that, but. I wanted to maybe understand why it was deleted.
You know, this, without knowing, I think this came from OSBA, but OSBA also commented that if the board wants to keep the recommended deletion, that's fine too, so. I think this is one where the board's got quite a bit of latitude.
I just don't know if it opens us up for risk to allow somebody to be handling our cash if they're not bondable, but I don't know anything about that, so my questions are just so I can understand.
Our annual meeting. Do you remember? I can't remember which item it is, but who was
Yeah.
bonded?
Uh-huh,
What-
yeah,
When we
We wouldn't
post
hire-
those, when we post the position for HR payroll or myself, we have that on the posting that you have to be able to be bonded to get the position. Like
okay,
that would be a criteria that would say, no, you don't get that now.
So it sounds like that should stay in there because it sounds like that's what we're doing.
I mean, I
on-
would feel more comfortable leaving it in there, if that's already what the practice is and there's no significant impact to. You know what I mean?
Jenny?
Yeah, Heidi?
I think maybe it's because the language is kind of generic, because it says any person who is not bondable. Will not be hired for a position which requires that person handling district funds or inventory. That's pretty general, handling district funds or inventory. They could be a coach who's. Handling soccer balls or something. I mean, I don't know what they mean by, district funds. It could be a small amounts. It could, and not everybody's able to be bonded. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be
Oh, I
hired.
see what you're saying.
I'm just guessing. Maybe that's the reason they took it out.
And I was just assuming that we were talking about. like,
Yeah, I did too, but after I
The
just
district office.
was reading that, I was wondering if that was it.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the way that it's
One
written down.
comment about the district funds, they might motivate us to put a period after district funds and strike over inventory, but if I read it right, there's an ORS that says the persons authorized to handle district funds shall be bonded.
What about concessionaires,
Well,
take ticket money?
Yeah.
That's an
That's what I was thinking
awful
of.
lot of folks.
yeah,
Is that considered district funds?
now you do wonder about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's,
Yeah, unless it's like, unless.
I mean,
it's-
concessionaires is probably not, because
Yeah.
that might be individual group,
Mm-hmm.
but taking money for a sporting event.
Yeah,
That goes into general funds on that, and that would be, I mean, the way our language reads, that would prohibit.
That would,
Yeah, but you're not hiring those people usually, right? You are usually those people parents and.
No, they're,
no,
they're,
They're staff.
paid. It's like
Oh,
they need
oh.
it,
In
yeah.
large part,
they're paid extra duty money, like, to do that.
I'm fine with striking out the language if when we hire into like, the big money, I guess. If the requirement is that they have to be bondable, I think we're covered. I'm just looking at it from a risk
Hmm.
perspective.
Mhm.
So thank you for helping me understand.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Next one is Merle VIVA Insurance Reserve Fund. OSBA was asking if this is current. And you recommended that we should delete it.
Well, it's recommended for delete.
I don't think
Is it?
Merle, you
Okay.
saw the
I guess that
watermark.
answered that.
Okay.
Yeah,
GID property inventories, so this one, I just had a quick question on the bracket changes, the supplies with greater value than 200 was changed to 1,000 by Linda, so I was just trying to understand like. What, I don't know, maybe what's that threshold mean?
well, I didn't know if Linda had done that, but when I look at this looks like almost just a reorganization, because when I read the current language, it says. The district will maintain a complete property inventory, which lists all school sites, buildings, equipment, and supplies. With a value greater than $1,000, so,
I was reading
Yeah,
this one
right.
down here, so if you were to like hover over it, it would
yes,
say
you could say, oh,
Linda changed it,
all right,
so that's why. I just
okay,
brought it
gotcha.
up.
So Linda, in this. Are you looking at, can you see the recommended DID?
Well, no, because you asked me not to show it on the screen,
Yeah.
so
Well, that's okay.
I can
this is
stop share and try to look at it.
Well, I'll just read it to you,
Okay.
because it's in. You clicking over to it might take a little bit, so it says, other district supplies with a value greater than. It originally was, it said it's
200.
gonna be 200 and it was changed to 1,000, will be included as part of the district's annual inventory. So the question is why did it change from 200 to 1,000?
Well, for one thing, we don't do an annual inventory, and I don't think you want to worry about a box of paper sitting anywhere in the district with a value, what is
Yeah.
it? And 4 boxes are $200 now or whatever. So we don't keep an inventory like that. Technology keeps track of their items through serial numbers and that kind of thing. So those sorts of things are tracked in a different way. So I thought that a higher rate, I asked a couple of my friends, they do not do anything by the 200 level. I don't know when this was first adopted, it probably made sense back then, but it certainly doesn't nowadays.
Okay, and that's where I was going, was like, what about the Chromebooks, but if they're tracked of inventory and, okay, I'm fine, moving on, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Stutzman, DJC bidding requirements,
Tabling.
And I recommended tabling this one until we get,
Really for my information.
yeah.
Or discuss, since I didn't understand it.
okay. I'm fine with the answer provided on DJFA. But, Merle, you had a question about,
Oh, I did have, the answer is okay. You know, if the end result works out, I was just thinking the policy. Says receipts don't need to return in for 25 days. And the district will pay promptly to avoid any fees. And I just was wondering if those two are going to cross. If you wait 25 days to audit the receipt. And you're still trying to pay to avoid the fee, I don't know if you'd make it. And I couldn't imagine why we couldn't, why we wouldn't ask for receipts to be turned in within 10 days, say.
that's how it is at my work, we have 10 days to turn it in,
It
but.
just made sense to me, but as long as we're able to do that, then that was my concern. It would cause us to compromise on one end or the other. If we still didn't have it. But I'm fine with strictly
Okay.
prohibited is prohibited. That's good.
All right, DLC on expense reimbursements, was yours too.
Hopefully
Probably,
my explanation.
yeah.
Okay.
After reading the explanation, I said, oh, okay.
Okay. DM cash in district buildings. Are you okay with the answer provided?
Yes, and we talked about other cash amounts.
Okay. EV safety program.
These next ones, my comment is just that all the OSHA things and the safety things,
Mm-hmm.
could they be consolidated in one program or a folder that they all go together and like we reference handbook rather than policies, but it sounds like that's not very workable. So
Okay,
along with these next ones that relate to that also. Safety things.
yep. All right, so just to call it out, EVAC on the,
EBSD, AD, and EDD, and the first aid, all of those
okay,
safety related
I'm fine skipping
considerations.
EVAC. My name was on that one. And ECG, you said?
Yes,
Okay,
What was it?
ECD. We're on. It's an optional policy. The district must have ADA compliant, whether it's stated in the policy or not.
So. No, I'm having a hard time hearing you. So were you saying all these EBB, EBAD, EBA, those are all good now? You got it,
Yes.
okay,
Yes,
thank you.
we moved down to ECD.
Yeah.
And I was fine if we wanted to do will instead of shall. I don't have a real strong preference there.
You have more thoughts on will versus shall?
no,
Um,
I think I would have meant may instead of shall. May instead of will, to make it optional whether the principles outline where the people park.
I'll just say that it takes away from your flexibility for parking then, because now you have designated areas and I mean, it takes away the superintendent's ability to, by making shall, will and shall like, well, do will and shall mean the same thing?
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, I was
yeah,
thinking
think
shall
I
and may.
Yeah,
Okay, I don't know, okay.
we have ADA parking at all the,
Yeah, we have to have ADA. I just was thinking of like staff and student.
okay. EDDA, this, there, in the first version that I read, or somewhere I read, there was like a link to a sustainable school, and I was like, what does this even mean? It wasn't even a valid link, but I don't know, I think sustainability is a pretty broad,
Yeah,
a pretty broad, term, and if this policy is just aspirational in nature,
Those are my words, so.
I liked it.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a couple on here where, I mean, sometimes policy is intended just to be aspirational. So I don't think these are. When there's purely aspirational in nature, it's really up to the board whether they want to have it or not, in my purview.
Strike it.
yeah.
Thank
I
you,
agree.
agreed.
Doesn't really, it's a whole lot of language, it doesn't mean much.
I think it's done through curriculum and just,
There's no teeth in it at all.
yeah, okay, and then EEAE, student transportation and private vehicles, so. On this one, Bill deleted brackets that state the driver is responsible for not placing anyone under 13 in the front seat. This one is near and dear to my heart, 'cause I'm so trained in child safety.
And I was okay
Or-
with, I'm okay with removing the strikeout and leaving the language there,
Okay,
so.
and then the next one was the reimbursable meals and milk programs. I know that we've
I
got,
need to, I'm sorry, I
Oh.
need to catch up, so on
Sorry.
EEAE. You wanna keep,
So on EEAE, that
What
on number
number?
5,
thanks,
that last portion where it says the driver is
Ah.
responsible, we want to retain that.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us on track, Diane.
Even if you have a.
What, got it.
Well, Diane's gonna be the one who's gonna take all
Gotta
this.
go in and.
12-year-old.
Yeah.
Even if you have a 150-pound 12-year-old who's 5'5",
They should actually, yeah. Be in the safest spot is in the back seat. Yeah.
good thing I'm not a parent.
And even if they're 13, we have a lot of like smaller 13-year-olds, they need to be the back seat. It's the safest spot.
Well, me and you should be in the backseat.
Yeah.
Don't mention that to Grace.
So on the E EFAAAR, so this is an AR that, you know, that needs to be in place, but I think that this would be. In my previous district, when we did a lot of food service policies, I just, and if board members had questions, I would bring in the food service director, because it gets over my head pretty quickly. So I think if we have questions about that, we can have set up a time for Lori to Gamboa to kind of what does this mean in practicality? What did,
I
you know,
could explain some of it to you, but I think that's a good idea.
yeah,
Okay.
Actually. With our new meals this year, is this even, I mean, kind of changed it.
No, if you bring your own lunch and you don't have our meal, you have to pay for milk. So there's a lot of different little
Oh, yeah.
pieces to it.
Okay, all right, I get that, yeah.
I think talking to Lori is probably best.
Yeah, I don't-
Okay, next one, EG AAA, reproduction of all copyrighted materials. That's you, Mr. Smith.
It is, and really over my head, but I like Superintendent's answer there.
Okay,
I think it's either way, either policy or handbook, that we cover these legal requirements.
so we can review whether we have this in a handbook and or what do we need to have in handbooks for this, so.
okay, tabling then for the next.
Well, I think we would adopt the policy, it's just, I think Merle had some questions about whether or not, you know, what do we have in our handbooks, so that we make sure, what I hear you saying is, are we following this? So,
Yeah, I know there's been a couple instances where we
probably haven't,
haven't.
Yeah.
And there was some. Catch up made. So
Mhm.
make sure
That
we
was
stay-
intellectual property.
Yeah.
That was that one, not
Yeah.
this.
After hearing the discussion, I wondered too if we would
I'm
be
not sure that
leaving
putting it in
ourselves
AR
vulnerable, not.
Makes a lot of difference, but I mean, as presented, I think this needs to stay as,
it needs to stay,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah.
All right, moving on to EHA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act.
That was answered,
Okay,
as in one, good.
EHB, cybersecurity. You're looking at some grammar and punctuation, don't just.
We must have, too long. Lead insanity.
Okay. Well, we're not adopting today, so.
Okay,
maybe
I'll
we
look it
can
over.
check that one.
It seems to me we just adopted a new cybersecurity policy within the last year.
Yeah, this one was from September
Okay,
eleventh
so
last
this
year,
is it.
actually, yeah.
Right.
So you previously approved it.
Yep.
I don't really see any changes on it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any changes here, and I wasn't, and that's why I said,
I think he wanted to propose some.
Yeah, that's how so I just said, if we want to discuss grammar, that's fine.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on, FB, facilities planning. Merle,
Yeah, I don't have changes to recommend,
okay,
comment.
all right, FBB, enrollment projections.
I thought that was covered in CBA, but I defer to superintendent.
So when you say CBA, the policy or?
CBA, the policy, yeah. And I specify, there must be one that has quite a few bullet points.
CBA is recommended to be deleted. So we
All
would,
right,
we would keep
have
that.
some things with me that I don't think I have with me. Let's see. Number one. Which says. Number one of specific functions, review data regularly. Lead the district in enacting equitable changes. 28 says recommend plans for repairs and new construction. And so on. And 32. Develop and recommend to the board long-range plans for educational programs and so on. Seemed like it covered that. The data and projecting long-range plans and what buildings might be needed.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But this FBB is about enrollment.
But this is a little more specific and different. So,
Okay,
And I would say with your funding tied to enrollment projections, you would want to have a policy of its own to talk about that.
enrollment.
are you good with that,
Yes.
sir? Okay. FEA, capital improvement education program.
And you see my comment there, stakeholders input, how is it to be, that's more of just a thought. Community involvement, how do you do that, rather than discussion area, rather than
Yeah.
policy change.
I
But I'm
think,
in agreement with the need to do that.
yeah, I think keeping it broad is a good way to go. We get too far into the weeds and. Okay, moving on to FEA. Crystal said board needs to be added back in under item 1.
And the way I interpreted this was that the purpose of striking out the board is that the superintendent would gather staff and community input and then organize that information, which is in number 2 on that policy. And then the board gets involved as that information in developing specification, which is the final paragraph. So I think it's the development doesn't include the board because the superintendent is encouraging staff and the community on the needs, desires of an educational program to be conducted within the proposed new building. And then organize that information. So that's how I interpreted that, but others
Yeah.
might look at that differently.
Yeah, I understand why she said that.
Does it hurt to put it back in there?
I don't think it hurts, and I would like the board to put back in there personally.
Any other thoughts on that? Glenn? Kelsey?
No. I mean, I think it's fine, I think it's fine, just the way it was.
Okay, so
Keep
does it
that.
hurt to keep it back in there?
No.
Okay, let's do that then. We'll keep it,
Mhm.
we're gonna keep forward, yep. FECBA. Energy conserving construction. Merle, that was you.
This is,
another aspirational in nature. I would like that. I'm gonna use that in my.
It's gonna be in your
day-to-day,
new vernacular.
and that's just a comment. I think we're aware that we would just do that. Like a common sense thing, but so it's all right to have it. It's just a way to eliminate one that perhaps we don't need.
I'm fine taking it out as well.
You mean the whole policy?
Mhm.
Diane, do you know if this was required because Oregon requires that we have energy saving designs in our,
new facilities.
yeah. Linda can talk to this, I'm sure.
A certain percent of bond for new construction has to be spent on energy savings projects. So if that's talking about that, I don't know if you can get rid of it.
It doesn't specifically reference it.
But I think whether we have this policy or not, we would have to meet those requirements.
I would not recommend deleting this.
Yeah,
Or
I'm not
removing
in
it.
favor of deleting it. I think this is a fiscal issue. It's an issue that the board should be concerned about on any new construction we do. And quite frankly, energy goes up and energy goes down and it goes up and. If one of our guiding principles is always looking at energy efficiency, I don't see that as a bad thing.
Right, well, this one says
Policy.
energy conserving. So I see that as different than efficiency. You know, we look at efficiency, we want some redundancy, generators, that kind of thing, but. I don't know, I'm not dying on this hill, I'm trying to leave it or take it out. But Merle,
To me, it's a fiscal issue, and I think that's good board governance to have.
Fair.
Fiscal eye and stuff.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
with that, and I don't disagree that we should be aware of the need for conservation, certainly.
all right, and we've got both Heidi and Merle on the next one with FFB, names on building plaques.
Well, I would recommend keeping this, and said that I would investigate as to whether we did this with the high school, because I don't think we did. You did, and we did.
No, it's somebody wrote recommend deletion on here.
No,
I'm on
that's
the
the
wrong
next
one.
one, that's
Okay.
FG.
Oh, right.
Student council examiner.
I mean, to answer your question, Merle, does this policy enhance student welfare and achievement? Probably not, but I do think that if you're gonna put names on building plaques, it should be decided before you go to do it, so that you can say, this is what we do.
Okay. Makes sense.
It's something that we've traditionally done.
It's pretty common everywhere.
But we didn't on the middle
Not on
school
the
or on the
high
high
You
school.
didn't
did we?
do it. This last,
I'm okay that we
Alright.
didn't.
Okay, well, I'm gonna be, I think it'd be nice if the efforts of the people at that time who worked hard to make that happen were recognized.
And I agree, yeah, I would agree with you on that. That's a good point.
There is a plaque. I just don't know whose names are on it.
I will go look into that.
Maybe it's a brick with a name. Okay, so we're leaving the policy, but Dan's gonna do some.
Yep.
Investigative work. FG, OSBA does not have this policy. Yep. Both Chris and I had the same, yeah, I think there just wasn't a
Right.
watermark on this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, good the end of it. Hour and a half.
Is this the only, I didn't really look into this, the names on building plaques. Is this our only overarching policy about naming any school facility?
No, it isn't named the facility.
Because we dealt with that, okay.
That's more than memorial. That, there is a policy later on that talks about that.
Yeah, and that really needs to be,
We do have policy on there, I can't remember what it is, but typically that would be for like Buzz Talk Fest.
well, I know there was movement underfoot to have the track renamed at one point.
Oh, does it currently have a name?
Ah.
Does it currently have a name?
I don't think so.
Mm.
But
Yeah, I have an opinion about that.
But somebody feels it's important to have a name on a track? I mean, is that like common with practice or something?
I don't know.
I don't know, I'm just asking questions.
Wilsonville, they had names on their fields, but it's usually because of a big donor,
Yeah,
you know, Randall Field and Hilliers and,
we don't get big donors here.
yeah,
I think ours are generally after
Hilliers,
people.
yeah,
that-
Hilliers, yeah.
in there in Woodburn.
Right,
Yeah.
that have passed, but
I was just called.
the program was.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
oh, yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of a funky place to live right there, right?
there was a little bit of controversy
Yeah.
as to
Yeah,
was this
but I wouldn't like
person
that.
a good representative
Oh, yeah.
of a facility. So.
I don't think.
I won't go any- I won't go any more than
Yeah, I think names should not be specific to people. I think they should be very generic.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you too, after some looking at this for.
So before we move on to the adoption of the remaining, that are on the agenda, did this process work for you as far as, because we're gonna do this again for G through I? So I think maybe right before Heidi and Glenn, you got here, so the ones we just got done doing, if there was no further discussion, those will be up for adoption on September 16th. So the A through F that everybody's good with will be up for adoption on September 16th. G through I will go through the same process on September 16th. And so we could be finding ourselves done with this process by the end of September.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
So
Do the policies end in I?
clarification, if you go through G and I at a regular business meeting and not a work session? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm proposing. We could keep the agenda maybe lighter.
Can we not adopt tonight?
We are adopting.
No.
Not on the ones that we reviewed, we're asking for adoption on the ones that were not
Oh, so
reviewed.
you're wanting to adopt this packet on the 16th.
Yes,
Okay, gotcha.
So we can revisit these if we sleep on them and I realize, but all the others. we're-
well, if there wasn't any comments that we collected on here, we're gonna bring it back for a recommendation, just like in this group that we're bringing as a recommendation, so we captured, I took notes, so I wouldn't, I mean, if there is further discussion, that's the board's purview to do that, but I'd be recommending the ones that we just breezed through would be adopted.
I like that approach.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's. got any other thoughts, okay,
I mean, board leadership and with Diane and me and cabinet will look at what the September 16th agenda looks like, so that we're, you know, we're having reasonable time limits for meetings and stuff like that, but I would love to have these all adopted by the end of September,
Yeah.
and I think we're on pace.
I did appreciate the more informal, like the way we're configured here, the more informal work session approach to looking at policies as opposed to a formal business meeting configuration.
Good idea, Diane.
Yeah, speaking of Diane, though, I just wanna say thank you so much for the packets and all of the work.
Yeah.
Countless hours that you put into it, really appreciate it, yeah.
A lot of people.
Okay, so moving on to item 2B, the OSD policies adoption. We're gonna ask to. For the ones that we did not review, that nobody had questions on,
Those are on the left column.
yeah, we're looking for. And like delete an adoption of the proposed and delete the ones that were the recommended to be deleted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would entertain hearing a motion.
I'll make a motion that we, adopt and delete, said policies, section A, B, C, D, E, and F, as discussed and, decided upon through review. Does that work?
Good job.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All of those votes? Your motion passes.
Nice work.
All right, we're going to adjourn the work session at 7:36. Thank you, everybody.
The policy on